Greetings. If you're just joining us, I know we've got quite a few people joining in the webinar today. So we will be getting started in just a few moments. We're going to give people a few additional minutes to join, and we'll get started. But we certainly appreciate you being here, and we have a very excellent presentation that was originally presented in Orlando, and I'm sure you'll find it of great interest. So just give us a minute more and we'll get started. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? There may be a few additional people joining, but we have a very large attendance. But again, welcome to today's IWCS webinar. My name is Dave Cadu, and I am honored to be the CEO and director of IWCS, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar event. A few housekeeping items for your reminder. As an attendee, you're part of a larger audience, and during the presentation, all participants will remain in listen-only mode. And also, as a reminder, this event is being recorded for rebroadcast. So if you wish to watch it again, you can do so. It will be posted on our IWCS.org website within the next week or so, I would imagine. We encourage you to submit written questions at any time during the presentation using the chat panel on the right of your screen. After typing in your questions in the space at the bottom in the chat, hit send, and your questions will be addressed time permitting at the end of the presentation. So go ahead and enter your questions during the presentation, and we'll get to them. Our IWCS webinar series event is hosted by the Cable and Connectivity Industry Forum. We had an excellent conference in Orlando in September, and now we're in full mode of preparing and looking forward to next year in Providence, Rhode Island. I'll give you a little bit more information on that later on. But today we welcome Jiwon Kang, a fire scientist and senior staff engineer from UL Solutions. He is in Illinois, USA. Jiwon will be presenting his paper on predictive modeling of large-scale flame tests on cables using the cone calorimeter. Dr. Kang is a fire scientist working in the field of fire protection for wire and cable products. He earned his PhD doctorate in mechanical engineering at Case Western Reserve University, with his research interests focused on combustion and fire science. He is a senior staff engineer at the Engineered Materials Operating Unit at UL Solutions, and he has published articles in Fire Technology and Journal of Fire Science, and he is based out of UL Solutions headquarters in Northbrook, Illinois. So welcome, Dr. Kang, and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. Can everyone see my presentation screen?
Yep.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, thank you again, everyone. My name is Jiwon Kang. I'm working for UL Solutions, reporting to Engineered Material. Like Dave said, I'm located at UL headquarters at Northbrook, Illinois. So our today's presentation is about predictive modeling of large-scale flame tests on cables using cone calorimeter. First is a little introduction about our company. UL Solution is a world leader in applied safety science. We have more than 15,000 employees working in more than 40 countries across the world. Through our deep technical expertise, the extensive knowledge of market access, the certification, and regulatory requirements, we are covering more than 150 countries, and 90 plus of them with highly equipped laboratories. We can help you quickly gain access to your priority markets while serving you in your time zone and language. Our global laboratories follow standardized testing plans and have synchronized reporting system, so you can expect consistent results no matter where you do business with UL solutions. Our network of global laboratories provides the ability to move staff and projects around to meet surge demands for accelerated product launches. UL Solutions has significant impact around the world, across the industry and business landscape with governments and policymakers. About 2/3 of the world's biggest companies are customers of UL Solutions, and they trust us with their proprietary data. Our experts has helped develop thousands of standards around the world, defining safety, sustainability, and quality. UL marks appear on billions of products globally. One of my colleagues told me a metaphor that I love so much. There are actually more UL marks in the world than McDonald's hamburgers that were ever made. Okay, so now let's get back to the topic. As you can see from the title, I will talk about large-scale flame tests and predictive modeling that UL has invested years' effort on research and development. There are many large-scale fire tests conducted at UL, but here in this presentation, I will focus about plenum, riser, and EN50399 tests. I will go through details later, but the very general scope of this work is to build correlation between large-scale and small-scale fire tests and develop predictive models using machine learning technology. So, why are we focusing on plenum, riser, and EN cables? As you know, in modern buildings, there are always a large quantity of cables installed in ceilings or inside the walls. They may be hiding in corners and hard to see during our daily life, but in an event of fire, the cable rods can facilitate flame and smoke movements easily. If you look at the picture on the right side, the cable passages can connect between rooms and connect between floors. And when the fire is happening, this kind of connection will allow flame to travel and spread, and will also allow smoke to move from one space to another. UL Solutions played an important role in developing wire and cable testing and regulations with a long history. We actually conducted our first test on wire back in 1896. So with this long history, UL is continuously developing and growing understandings on the fire safety aspect of these cable systems. So first, let's talk about the large-scale tests. At UL, we do tests followed by NFPA 262 standard. It's also called the plenum cable test. The test is designed for cables run through open or concealed horizontal passages in a building and requires the cable must be designed to meet rigorous requirements for fire resistance and limited smoke production. The cable is tested in the standard tunnel that was developed by Albert Steiner, who was a UL engineer almost 100 years ago. If you look at the picture below on the left, is a digital drawing of the inner space of the standard tunnel. As you can see, the burner was positioned close to the tunnel opening. It's pointing to the top of the cable installation. During the test, the burner will trigger an ignition on the cable and allow the flame to propagate towards the end of the tunnel in the horizontal direction. The picture on the right is showing the actual cable installation inside the standard tunnel. From this test, we measure the flame propagation distance over in the horizontal direction, and we also measure the AOD, which is average absolute density, representing the average smoke release, as well as the POD, which is the peak optical density, representing the peak smoke release. Making these parameters as compliance requirements are important because they are directly related with flame travel capability on the cable and smoke production, which can damage human lungs and influence people's vision from seeing the exit. The next test we are going to talk about is the UL1666 riser cable test. This test is designed for cables installed in vertical runs in a shaft or penetrating floors. If you look at the right-hand side pictures, the test is basically simulating a real-world cable installation that goes through building floors. The burner is located at the very bottom to trigger an ignition and a flame spread. Thermocouples are installed at the opening on the second floor. So from this test, the temperature rise and flame spread height in the vertical direction are measured. The third test we are going to talk about is the EN50399, the common test method for cables run under fire conditions. The test is under EU Regulation 305/2011. It is called Harmonized Condition for the Marketing of Construction Products. This regulation is applicable for all building products, including cables, made available or offered to the marketplace for permanent installation in buildings and civil engineering projects. This requirement is for all types of cables used in construction works, irrespective of their type, the size, shape, material, or end-use application. The details of the chamber on the right side picture is specified in the standard IEC 60332-3-10. If you look at the pictures, you will see the cable is installed on a metal ladder in the vertical direction. The burner is pointing to the bottom of the cable. During the test, the burner will trigger an ignition on the cable and allow the fire to propagate in the vertical direction. The combusted gas will be directed through a laser-based smoke measurement system and will reach to a gas analyzer. The laser system will measure the smoke production rate as well as the total smoke production. The gas analyzer will measure the heat release rate as well as the total heat release. So that's all for the large-scale fire test. In this work, we test samples collected from large-scale fire test under cone calorimeter. The cone calorimeter is a small-scale test apparatus used to determine the material ignitability, the heat release rates, mass loss rates, effective heat of combustion, and visible smoke. The device setup and test method was specified in the standard ASTM E1354. UL solution actually has a long history to use a cone calorimeter to analyze short lengths of cables and determine their fire characteristics. So with our long history working on both large-scale flame test and small-scale cone test, we figured that if we can predict the large-scale flame performance based on the fire characteristics collected from small-scale cone test, there will be a lot of benefits. For example, the cone test UL solution is only charging about 2/3 of doing a large-scale flame test. The lead time is only half of the large-scale test, while doing a cone test will only require about 20 feet of the cable sample, in comparison with hundreds or even thousands of feet of the sample required by doing a large-scale flame test. So we developed the predictive model based on small-scale tests only. I will start to go through details of model development right after this slide, but as a result, we found the model accuracy is fairly high, although not like 100% perfect. That's why the model is currently used for assisting research and developments. It's not for certification use. So in order to develop the model, we subject cable samples to both large-scale and small-scale tests. For cone calorimeter test, we collect the heat release history, the smoke generation, mass consumption, and we pack this data together as a product flammability character data. And then we correlate this data with the large-scale test result of the same product. The basic principle for developing a model is to train the computer to learn this correlation. Then, when it sees a new small-scale data point, it will compare it with its knowledge base and estimate what the large-scale test result can be. For plenum samples, we were testing them using standard sample holders specified in ASTM E1354. If you look at the picture on the right, the first picture is showing that the cables were cut in short lengths and packed in this 3x3-inch sample holder. The second picture is showing the spark ignitor trying to ignite the cable, and the third picture is showing the sample burn under the cone. For riser and EN50399 samples, we have to treat them differently, because if you remember, the cable will hang in the vertical direction in the large-scale chambers. This gave us a very different fire dynamics compared with the horizontal installation. In order to better replicate this fire dynamic, UL Solution developed a small-scale ladder holder with an open burner installed as the ignition source to test with these cables with a cone. So, for the vertical test of the cables, when the cable is burned in the chamber, the upper portion of the cable is receiving heat not only from the burner below it, but also from the cable burning below them. In order to develop a reasonable testing process, we used riser chamber as a reference and measured the thermal distribution over length for multiple tests. Based on data analysis, we have created a burner and cone heater combination that can simulate the thermal environment that cable sample can actually experience between 4 to 6 feet inside the riser chamber. So now let's talk about the models. First is the plenum model. The latest version of this model was put into place in early 2021. We have some minor updates after that, but no major changes. Below is an example of the result portion of the UL Solution cone datasheet. Basically, if you subject a small-scale sample to conduct a predictive cone test for plenum, you will have this right highlighted section appear at the bottom of the cone datasheet. The AOD is standing for predicted average optical density. FP is standing for predicted flame propagation, and POD is standing for predicted peak optical density. We have validated the cable using 17 cables purchased in the US market that were self-declared as being plenum cables. This model showed a very good performance on predicting the large-scale fire test failures. We conducted the actual large-scale fire test on these cables and confirmed that the model successfully captured all the failures. Because of the machine learning feature, we have the power to continuously educate the model. Hence, UL has been closely monitoring our test records and is collecting any necessary data points to improve the model. The next model we're going to talk about is the riser model. This model was also put in place in early 2021 and was implemented in a very similar structure with the plenum model. Below is an example of the cone datasheet. If you subject a small-scale sample to do the riser predictive cone test, you will have the FHP output and FH output shown on the cone datasheet. FHP is standing for flame height prediction, and FH is standing for flame height. I know this sounds really similar, but actually they work in very different ways. The FHP is a formal predicted riser test result. But please note, the testing section of the riser chamber is 12.5 feet tall, meaning the maximum test result you can get from an actual riser test will be 12.5. But when the model is working with the FH output, it's assuming the chamber does not have a ceiling at all. So there will be a very long cable hanging there, got ignited from the bottom, and is just letting the fire propagate. When we are working with a good cable that won't have its flame height above 12.5 feet, the FH output will equal with FHP. But when we are working with a bad cable, it doesn't matter how bad the cable is, the FH output will always equal to 12.5 feet, because that's the limit of the actual test. But the FH output might be 12.6 feet or 12.7 feet for marginal bad cables. And for really bad cables, the FH output may be equals to 20 or 30 feet, indicating it's a really bad product. We have validated the Riser model in a similar way, like the plenum model, and it's been shown to be very accurate since implementation. And because of this feature, of the special feature I mentioned just now, it's been shown to be particularly accurate on predicting significant non-conformances. And again, similar to the plenum model, we are using market survey samples to monitor the model performance. Any mismatch records will be saved for modeling improvements. The third one is the EN50399 model. This model was developed focusing on making predictions for class B2CA, class CCA, and class DCA. The model was developed with combined use of both classification and regression modeling technique. The model is capable to classify the sample, as well as predict the THR, the peak HRR, the figura, and fire spread. But please note, droplets and smoke release were not considered. The model developments were completed during Q1 of 2023. Right now, UL Solution is mostly using this model internally for validation and potential improvements. But actually, beginning from last month, we have started to offer this model to our external clients. So anyone, if interested, we are very welcome you to reach out to us. Okay, so that's all for the presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Jiwon, thank you very, very much for a very interesting presentation. Clearly a very helpful tool for anyone who is wanting to take a look at the fire performance of cabling without having to get thousands and thousands and thousands of feet of cable. So well done. I'm sure it's going to still take quite a bit of research to even perfect it further. But again, I remind everyone, if you have any questions for Jiwon, please enter them in the chat, hit send, and we will address them to Jiwon as time permits. Jiwon, by computer learning, do you mean to infer AI, artificial intelligence? And if so, what data set are you using?
So the data set we are using basically is a combination between cone calorimeter test and the large-scale flame test. Like I mentioned in the presentation just now, from cone calorimeter test, we collect the heat release information, the mass consumption, and smoke generation. From the large-scale fire test, we basically collect the large-scale fire test result. And then we build a correlation between these two features. As you know, the heat release rate and smoke generation are basically the flammability character of a product. And this character definitely correlates with the large-scale fire performance. So that's actually give us a mostly a simple story to develop a machine learning model. Because even before we developed the model, we already know the data we are training the computer are very correlated with each other.
Excellent. The next question is, what heat flux have you used in the cone calorimeter?
We generally tried typical heat flux that research community has been using, like 25 kilowatts, 50, or sometimes even 70 kilowatts per meter square. But for developing the model, we were really trying to combine the heat flux from the cone heater together with our ignition burner. So that's really gives the testing a different case scenario. So it's really hard to describe the sample thermal treatment with purely just a number of the heat flux.
Yeah. It may be outside the scope of this presentation, but is it possible for you to share some of the data?
The data, I'm afraid, is gonna be hard to share because when we train the model, most of the data were like private, belongs to UL. So that's basically our intellectual property.
Yep. Okay. What kind of correlation coefficient is found for a cone calorimeter versus the NFPA 262 plenum cable fire test?
That one, I'm sorry that I don't have an answer because when we developed the model, it's more of a teamwork. So it was a group of fire scientists working together with a group of data scientists. And we split our work. Like from the fire side, we design the experiment, we collect the sample, and we do some initial data cleaning. And for the data scientist set of work, they write the computer code and they implement different modeling technique to train the computer. So for this very specific question, sorry, I don't have an answer right now.
Okay, fair enough. With the sample holder that you developed for the EN 50399 test, can you guarantee or ascertain that there's no impact from the airflow from the lab?
Oh yeah, we can definitely guarantee that because if anyone got a chance to visit our cone lab located at Melville, at UL Melville Station, we have a really big space over there that we were actually having two cones running at the same time. The space is large enough to make sure the airflow in the room will not disturb the fire test. Also, for the cones, they have a window shutter to cover the testing section when we do the test. That's another layer of protection to make sure the fire propagation, on the sample will not be influenced by any people walking around it or people opening the door or closing the door.
Yeah, that's very important, both air and also humidity and temperature and all sorts of other conditions is important to be consistent, I'm sure.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you have any correlation statistics that indicate, easy passing or marginally passing cables? I mean, just from a relative perspective, I would imagine.
Yes, that's a very good question. When we generate model output, like the result we directly shown to others is really the predicted result. But for the model is also capable to give us a confidence level. For example, let's use the EN model as an example. The model will, when you put a new data point into the model, the computer will compare that data point with its training database and will actually tell you an output as the confidence level to tell you how close this data point is from those training data points in its knowledge base. If the new incoming data point is close to the training data point, it will give you a high confidence level. So it's telling you, hey, I know a lot about this product, so I'm confident on the predicted result I'm giving to you. And if this data point is far away, let's say it's from some really brand new cable product that we haven't trained the computer before, it will just tell you that, hey, I'm not so confident. So that way, it's not really just giving you a simple prediction that you will start to question, hey, so how good is the prediction? It will give you some additional information to tell you like how confident, like how close this new case is with our like tens or hundreds training cases.
Right. Good. Just for clarification, is it possible to send UL a small sample of cable just to check what would be the THR, total heat release, if we would like to get a DCA with the same cable later on? So I guess it's for relative testing over time.
Yes, as I'm showing on this page, the EN model is capable to classify the sample, basically tell you whether it's a class B2CA, class CCA, or class DCA, but it's also capable to predict the actual test parameter you can get from the large scale chamber. So THR, peak HRR, the Figura, and fire spread will be predicted as well. And definitely, if you are really interested to know the detailed parameters of your product, you can also schedule the large-scale fire test with us.
Right. How many samples did you have to burn in the riser or the CPR test and the cone to establish a good correlation?
We burn tons or sometimes even hundreds of samples. That gave us the freedom to carefully select data points to train the model. Yeah, when people talk about machine learning, people always say, okay, the more data, the better. But that's not really the case. The data quality is very important to train a good model. And because UL has a unique special testing capability on wire and cable product, we have the power to collect so many data points to train the model. And we have the freedom to carefully select the data point and abandon any bad data points, for the model training.
Right. Good. How many different cable constructions were used in the training data set? Are there certain cable constructions that you have a higher certainty of model accuracy versus others? Do you have like a standard cable design that is helpful in the correlations?
So when we select samples, sometimes the sum is limited by the testing capability of the cone calorimeter. For example, when we research the EN50399 model, we cannot test any cable that is larger than that has a diameter larger than 20 millimeter, because those cables will be just too big to be tested under the cone. And we also were not able to test the armored cables because number one, they were very rare to see in our lab when we during our sample collection phase. And number two, those armor protection maybe really influence the heat input from the cone. As you know, the cone heat input is not as powerful as a burner input from the large scale chamber. But overall, when we select sample for model training, we were not really focusing on any specific cable construction. We were just picking any cable that is reasonable to be tested under the cone, and we collect the data and we train the computer.
This question is really about what results would be provided if someone were to send you a plenum cable sample for this kind of testing. What data would they get? Would you actually be able to do some sort of prediction for flame spread, peak optical density, and average optical density?
Yes, as I'm showing on this page, that right highlighted section is the predicted result. So if you give us a small scale sample to do the cone test, at the bottom of the cone data sheet, you will have this right highlighted section telling you what the predicted AOD is, what the predicted fire propagation distance is, and what the predicted POD is.
Yeah, a very useful tool. I'm sure it's not 100% accurate, but it certainly gives you a lot of screening before you actually go to the full scale fire test. Can this model be used by other labs from UL with other chambers, other environments, that kind of thing?
So that's really more like a business and commercial discussion with our business team. But please note, I'm from technical side, so I will give technical comment on this question. We are very serious on calibrating our equipment. For example, the UL Cone Lab is doing C-factor calibration every day, and we were doing the PMMA calibration every day. When we purchase the equipment from the manufacturer, they gave us a specified C-factor range that we should keep the machine to be in a good shape. But we were not really using their range. We were using our range, which is much narrower than the range they gave us. So basically, we spend a lot of effort to make sure our cone is delivering an accurate result. But if you use other instrument, like we will no longer be able to guarantee such a good quality data.
Yeah. Just a few more questions, and clearly we want to thank the audience for entering all of your questions. Clearly, this is an indication on how excellent this presentation and how important this topic is, considering the number of questions that we have coming in. So just a few more. What range of sizes of cables have been tested in the cone for building the model?
The range size of the cable, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Again, like for the EN model, we were not able to test any cable that is larger than 20 millimeter in diameter. We are able to test cable that is smaller than 5 millimeter in diameter. Like we don't really have a lower limit because like the smallest cable we have seen were like 2 millimeter or 3 millimeter. So yeah, we haven't really checked the lower limit.
Okay. Do you think that there's any capability to model and predict the European EN 50399 results versus the UL 1666 riser results? Again, this is trying now to compare results from one test to another, fire test.
Well, if interested, we can definitely do that. Like a cable may be designed with different feature when they are trying to comply with different standard. But if it's really interesting, we can definitely test the same cable product under different model and see how they behave. So that's no problem.
Would this approach be helpful to manufacturers for their own surveillance purposes rather than doing full-scale testing?
Yeah, this model will be really helpful for research and development, especially when you are trying to make comparison with between large number of product. Let's say if you design maybe 10 different cable construction and you want to compare their fire performance, this is like a perfect timing for using this model because you will only need to give us about 20 feet for each of the construction. You can test the cable under the cone and they will tell you what's the predicted result for each of the cable as well as the overall cone test data. And that will give you a very good comparison on which one is good, which one is not so good. Without the model, you may need to give us 1,000 feet for each of the construction. That will result a lot of more manufacturing and definitely will result a very large shipping fee.
You said a maximum outer diameter of 20 millimeters is what you've used. Is there a minimum outer diameter for the model to be effective?
So no. Again, as I said just now, like we don't really have a lower limit at this moment. We were just we were capable to test cable below 5 millimeter in diameter, and the minimum cable I've seen were like 2 or 3 millimeter. But I don't think like an even smaller cable will be an issue.
Right. And while you're doing all of this testing on cables, do you think that this predictive modeling system would be useful for components? Basically plaque testing on materials or different cable components
So
like
for
tapes
the
and
yeah, yeah. So for the models I'm talking about in this presentation, they are not really good for material testing, because especially for the riser and yin model. As I said, we developed special sample holder just for better replicate the fire dynamics in the large scale chamber. And it will be no point to test a piece of plastic, purely plastic, on the ladder holder, unless you want to understand what's the fire dynamic, what the fire dynamic will be if you put a piece of plastic in the in the vertical direction in the large scale chamber. But yeah, like there are definitely potential to develop a model for plastic plaques or tapes material only. The basic principle is to collect the fire characteristics of the material. It doesn't matter what material we are looking at, and then correlate the data we can collect from the small scale test with the large scale test.
yeah, and clearly the interactions between the components and the dynamics, like you said, of a full cable design, you really can't have, just one component predict the cable performance in total as a full
Yeah.
cable unit. So, it could be good relative testing of materials, but certainly no correlation to the full scale cable fire test. Anyway, we want to thank you again, the audience, for such great questions, really comprehensive. And we took some extra time today with Jiwon to take advantage of his excellent perspectives and knowledge. So thank you, Jiwon, again, from all of us for presenting this very interesting and important topic today. Please note the contact points being shown on your screen should you wish to contact Jiwon after today's event. If you want to reach out to him on any component of the presentation. Each of these IWCS webinar series events are recorded and are archived on our website, iwcs.org. And normally takes just about a week or so to get them up on the website. Again, the webinar series conducts technical paper presentation webinars, as well as some sponsored company events several times each month. Our next technical paper presentation webinar event will be on Friday, November 17th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern USA time. Each of you will be receiving an announcement for that event. Please feel free to share those announcements with your colleagues so that they can join in and register as well. It's important that we all recognize and thank our IWCS partner sponsors, including UL Solutions, who contribute greatly to the success of our Cable and Connectivity Industry Forum. Without their strong leadership, contributions, technology, as well as their financial generosity, we would not be able to bring these important technical innovations and information to you and our global community. So again, we thank you for these leading suppliers in our industry and for all of your support. Again, for over 72 years now, the IWCS Cable and Connectivity Industry Forum has been the recognized leader in showcasing new technologies for the cable and connectivity industry for products and processing and applications. Our 73rd annual Cable and Connectivity Industry Forum will take place again live on Monday through Thursday, October 14th through 17th in 2024 at the Rhode Island Convention Center in Providence, Rhode Island. We are now embarking on generating the program. We will be launching our call for papers. We solicit each one of you to submit your work and present your topics as we have seen from Jiwan. Will bring great recognition to yourself as well as your company. So watch your inbox, social media, and our website to learn more information as it becomes available. So again, visit our website at IWCS.org, and we look forward to hearing from you. Again, thank you for participating. This concludes today's webinar event. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jiwan. All the best.